There is a moment that happens in almost every serious cyclist's life. You're standing over your bike and you catch yourself staring at the wheels, not the frame, not the group set, the wheels. Because somewhere along the way, someone told you that this was the upgrade, the one that changes everything, the one that finally makes you fast. And the price tag attached to that promise is $2,000, sometimes more, for a pair of deep, glossy, carbon aerodynamic wheels. So before you spend that money, let's ask the question the marketing never quite answers directly. How much faster do these actually make you? Not in a wind tunnel, not on a pro's bike. You, on your roads, at your speed. Because the honest answer is more complicated, more interesting, and far more useful than anything printed on the box. Let's start with what everyone believes, because the belief is remarkably consistent. Ask 10 club riders what the best value upgrade for a road bike is, and most of them will say wheels. It has become cycling common sense, repeated so often that nobody questions it anymore. And underneath that belief sits a second one, even more deeply held, that the magic of carbon is that it's light, that lighter wheels spin up faster, climb better, and that lightness is where the speed comes from. Hold on to that idea for a moment, because it's about to become the first thing we take apart. Here's what's actually happening when you ride. At any real road speed, the thing fighting you hardest is not gravity, and it's not the weight of your bike. It's air. Aerodynamic drag is the dominant force resisting a cyclist on flat ground, and it grows viciously as you speed up. But here's the part that reframes everything.
It's you. Your body, sitting up in the wind, is roughly 3/4 of the total resistance. The entire bicycle is the smaller share, and the wheels are only a slice of that smaller share. So when a company tells you their wheels are dramatically more aerodynamic, they are talking about optimizing a small fraction of a small fraction. That doesn't mean it's worthless, but it should immediately change the scale of the promise in your head. So why wheels at all? Why does the industry pour so much engineering into rim shapes if the wheel is such a small part of the picture? The answer is elegant. The front wheel sits out ahead of you, cutting into clean, fast, undisturbed air before your body has turned it up. It's one of the very few places on the bike where the shape of a component genuinely changes how air flows. A deep rim smooths that airflow. It delays the point where the air tears away from the surface and starts creating turbulent drag behind the wheel. And at certain wind angles, a well-shaped deep rim does something that sounds almost magical. It behaves a little like a sail, generating a small forward-acting force. That is real physics. That is not marketing. But notice the phrase I just used, at certain wind angles. Remember it, because it's the hinge the entire story turns on. Now let's put a number on the benefit, because vague promises are how money gets wasted. Independent wind tunnel testing, done by people with no wheels to sell, gives us a realistic picture. Swap a basic, boxy aluminum wheel for a genuinely deep aerodynamic carbon set, and at high speed you might save something in the region of 5 to 15 watts across the two wheels, depending on the wind angle. 5 to 15 watts.
If you're a rider, that number probably sounds meaningful, and it can be. But here's the sentence that the marketing department never puts in large print. That saving is measured at racing speed, often around 45 kilometers an hour. And drag does not scale politely. It scales with the cube of your speed. Which leads us to the single most important idea in this entire film. The faster you ride, the more those saved watts are worth. And the slower you ride, the more they evaporate. This is not an opinion, it's the shape of the physics. So let's translate watts into the only currency that actually matters to a human being on a bike: time. Picture a strong rider holding 40 kilometers an hour alone into the wind over a 40-kilometer effort. For that rider, a 10-watt aerodynamic saving might genuinely be worth somewhere between half a minute and a minute. In a race, that's the difference between the podium and the pack. That is a real, defensible, worth-your-money benefit. Now keep the exact same wheels, the exact same watts saved, and put them under a different rider, someone averaging 28 to 30 kilometers an hour, which describes an enormous number of committed, fit, genuine enthusiasts. For that rider, over the same distance, the time saving shrinks dramatically, often to well under 30 seconds. Same wheels, same physics, a fraction of the reward. And we haven't even reached the most uncomfortable part yet, because most enthusiasts don't do most of their riding alone into the wind. They ride in groups. And the moment you tuck into a bunch, sitting in the draft of the riders ahead, the aerodynamic picture collapses. You're no longer punching a hole in clean air. Someone else is doing that for you. The value of your expensive Aero wheels in that setting drops close to the point of irrelevant for long stretches of the ride. So if you're honest with yourself about where your kilometers actually happen, on club runs, in the pack, chatting on the flat, then the number the wheels are quietly offering you is smaller than you were led to believe. This is exactly the trap. The riders most likely to buy premium deep wheels are the ones who benefit from them the least, and the riders who benefit most, the racers and the time frauists, are a small minority of the people actually handing over the money. Let's go back to that belief we set aside earlier. Weight. The idea that carbon's gift is lightness. On flat and rolling ground, the weight of your wheels barely matters at all. Carrying a few hundred extra grams on a steady flat road costs you almost nothing because you're not lifting it, you're just rolling it along. Weight only starts to matter when you tilt the road upward, and even then, the effect is smaller than the mythology suggests. Take a long climb and shave 300 or 400 grams off your wheels, and the time you save is usually counted in a handful of seconds, not minutes. There's a related idea the marketing loves, that weight at the rim is special because it has to be spun up, not just carried. That's true, rotational weight is real, but its effect on steady riding is routinely exaggerated. It matters when you're repeatedly sprinting and accelerating, in a criterium, in an attack. It does not meaningfully hold back a rider cruising along at a constant speed. So if a wheel is being sold to you primarily on how many grams it saves, be suspicious.
So what is the most important thing in the room? Here's where the story turns, because there's a giant hiding in plain sight and almost nobody upgrading their wheels is thinking about it. Tires and pressure. The rolling resistance of your tires, the energy lost as the rubber deforms against the road, can differ between a mediocre setup and a great one by an amount that rivals and sometimes beats the entire aerodynamic gain of a wheel upgrade, and it costs a tiny fraction of the price. This is the part that should genuinely change how you spend your money. A rider chasing speed will often get more measurable benefit from a set of premium tires run at the correct pressure than from a deep carbon rim. And here's the twist that ties it together. Part of the real-world speed of a modern wheel isn't the rim depth at all. It's that modern wheels are wider, and a wider rim lets you run a wider tire at a lower pressure, which rolls faster, grips better, and is more comfortable. Some of the benefit you're paying carbon prices for is actually a tire benefit, wearing a carbon costume. Now we come to the penalty, the one the brochures are strangely quiet about. Everything that makes a deep wheel slippery in a headwind also makes it a handful in a crosswind. That same tall surface that smooths the air also catches sidewind like a sail you didn't ask for. Push the wind angle far enough and the airflow stalls, and the front wheel suddenly shoves at your steering, forcing you to fight the bike to hold your line. Engineers have worked hard on this. Modern rims with their blunter, wider, rounded
And for some riders, this isn't a minor annoyance, it's the whole decision. If you're a lighter rider, if you ride exposed coastal roads, if crosswinds already make you nervous on a fast descent, then a very deep front wheel can turn a thrilling ride into a tense one. It's the reason so many experienced riders quietly run a shallower wheel up front and save the deep section for the rear, where the steering penalty doesn't apply. The wheel that tests fastest in the tunnel is not always the wheel that's fastest or safest on a real windy road with a real nervous human on top of it. There's another piece of good news buried in all of this, and it's about braking, because it explains why carbon wheels went mainstream in the first place. For years, carbon wheels carried a genuine, documented flaw. On rim brake bikes, the rim itself was the braking surface, and carbon didn't shed heat or handle wet weather like aluminum did. Riders had real, legitimate reasons to worry. Then disc brakes arrived and moved the braking away from the rim entirely. Suddenly, the rim's only job was to be aerodynamic and strong, and one of the biggest historical objections to carbon simply vanished. So if you're buying a new disc brake wheel set today, that old braking anxiety isn't your problem. But if you're tempted by a cheap used set of rim brake carbon wheels, understand that you're inheriting a compromise the disc brake buyer left behind. Let's talk about what happens after you've owned them for a while, because a purchase isn't just its price tag. A good carbon rim, freed from brake track wear on a disc bike, can last for years. But carbon has a different relationship with damage than aluminum does. Hit a sharp pothole hard enough, or go down in a crash, and where an aluminum rim might dent and soldier on, or be replaced cheaply, a cracked carbon rim usually means buying a whole new one. And here's a quiet truth that the rim material distracts you from. Over the long run, the things most likely to actually go wrong, the bearings, the free hub, the spokes, often matter more to your ownership experience than whether the rim is carbon or aluminum. A beautifully aerodynamic rim wrapped around a cheap hub is not the upgrade you think it is. So where has all this left the price? This might be the most encouraging part of the whole story. The carbon wheel market has changed enormously. Direct-to-consumer brands and shared manufacturing have pushed the cost of genuinely capable carbon wheels far below where the premium names sit. And when you look closely at that old price gap, a large part of it was never raw aerodynamic superiority. It was brand, marketing, and distribution. That doesn't mean every cheap wheel is a good wheel, and it doesn't mean the premium engineering is fake, but it does mean the days when a fast carbon wheel required a $3,000 check are gone. The question is no longer just carbon versus aluminum. It's whether the specific wheel in front of you is buying you performance or buying you a logo. So let's bring it all the way back to that rider standing over their bike, staring at their wheels, wondering. Here is what the evidence actually tells us. If you're a competitive amateur racer or a time trialist, someone who spends real time alone at high speed off the front, then deep Aero wheels are one of the clearest, most justifiable upgrades you can make. The watts convert to real seconds, and seconds are your whole world.
If you're a strong solo rider, grinding out long efforts at 32 kilometers an hour or more, the benefit is real but modest, and it's genuinely worth it only after you've spent money on the cheaper things that matter more first. Good tires, correct pressure, a proper bike fit, your own fitness. If you're the average enthusiast doing most of your riding in the bunch at social speeds, then be honest with yourself, because the measurable gain from deep wheels is small, and your money will almost certainly buy more actual speed somewhere else. If you're an endurance rider chasing all-day comfort, a mid-depth wheel with room for wide tires is very often the smarter sweet spot than the deepest thing on the shelf. And if you're a lighter rider or you live where the wind never stops, a very deep front wheel might not just underdeliver, it might make your riding worse. None of this means carbon wheels are a scam. They're not. The engineering is real, the aerodynamics are real, and for the right rider on the right road, that quiet forward push is a genuine pleasure and a genuine advantage. What the industry sells you, though, is a single universal promise: faster, for everyone, always. And that promise doesn't survive contact with the physics. The truth is that a wheel upgrade is not one decision. It's a different decision for every rider. And the only way to make it well is to know exactly which rider you are, where your kilometers really happen, and how fast you truly ride. Do that, and you stop buying the story on the box, and you start buying the wheel that's actually right for you. And that clarity, more than any rim depth, is the thing that will save you the most.
The next time someone tells you wheels are the upgrade that changes everything, you'll know the right question to ask back. Faster for whom? Because now you already know the answer might be you, or it might not be. And knowing the difference is worth more than any set of wheels you could ever buy.